back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Heidi Love. First, a couple of announcements. Some great ways to help support Forbidden Knowledge News. Watch the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana, available on Tubi and multiple streaming platforms. You can also get a Rokfin premium membership and get access to all our premium content at rokfin.com/FKN+. Download our audio podcast through Spreaker. Finally, we are booking guests for October and November. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Heidi Love. She is host of the Unfiltered Rise podcast. She shares her insights from her journey and escape from a Mormon cult. She is also a psychiatric nurse that works to help others struggling with mental health issues. Heidi, welcome. How you doing?
Great. How are you today?
Excellent. It's great to have you. Looking forward to the discussion. We're going to talk about your journey and how this religious cult organization operates, its dangerous ideologies, and how you manage to escape it. This is a very important topic, and there's a lot of layers to this, but before we get into your story, this is your first time on. Tell the audience just a little bit about yourself and your podcast and what you're currently involved with.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. I am Heidi Love. I have the Unfiltered Rise podcast, and I started this on accident. It's been going about a year now, right? All good podcasters, I think, fall into the rabbit hole. So that happened. Yeah. I was a normie mom and like a regular person until 2020. I did get out of the Mormon church, and I just believe in God now, and I don't subscribe to church in any form or fashion anymore. It's just fool me once. Yeah, so I got out and just like I said, I went on one show, Josh Monday, Christian Conspiracy Podcast. I did a little presentation and kept coming back, and he's like, maybe you should just do that because they like you. So I was like, what? Like, I have no idea how to do the computer things, right? Yeah. But I cried for the first 5 shows and I figured it out. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have voices like yours in the podcasting world. And I love that more and more people are starting to do this and share stories like yours, which is very important right now. So I know you have a presentation. Go ahead and let us know, where should we start with this?
All right. Well, I like to give a little bit of background on the Mormon church, because when people see Mormon cult, right, they kind of almost laugh. They're like, they're the nicest cult people ever. And what are you talking about?
There's a lot more and more. We're hearing these stories that are coming out of people that are sharing their experiences. And I think that especially people who listen to this show may not be as surprised as you think.
Good, because that will be helpful because people don't always know, someone else's story. And today we're going to focus on the mainstream Mormon church. I do have connections with the Warren Jeffs thing, only because my brother-in-law was Warren Jeffs' nephew. And that's a whole different rabbit hole. But living in Utah, it's not that surprising. I know it sounds crazy, but I mean, everybody's related here. So, so I like to give a background kind of about Joseph Smith and the church, because they're going to tell you some things that don't sound that culty. They're going to say, oh, Joseph Smith had a vision. Well, that sounds a little weird, but so did Muhammad, right? So did other people. And he saw God the Father and the Son at age 14. And this is that representation. This is actually a church photograph that I grew up with. And that's fine and everything. And then he gets to talk to this angel, Moroni, and that's the guy that's up on top of the temples. And so temples are not churches. You can't just go in them. They're specific, and you have to have like a temple recommend, and there's a whole lot of rules, and we'll get into that. But this is a misrepresentation. And as I started digging my way out of the Mormon church, like I said, I never wanted to do that really, but I did want to know what I'd done. Okay, like when you start unraveling the things that you've done, if you've been in a cult or if you've made oaths and you do want to be a Christian, you kind of question like, well, what did I do? So that's kind of how this started. Just me trying actually to prove I didn't do anything weird, because at the time I sort of still believed in it. So that sucked. But we find things
Yeah.
out, right? And this angel is not an angel. He's a dead guy. And so when we start talking about angels that were once people on the earth, it's necromancy. So their whole church theology is based off of this guy said these plates were somewhere, and they make it this beautiful story, and they show us like plates coming out of this hill, Cumorah, and it's this wonderful thing. And actually, we just passed the date of that because it was the fall equinox, the 22nd, when he finally got these plates, because it was not, this is Moroni again on top of the temple, it was not actually all sweet and innocent like it sounds, and we'll get there as well. So to give some other context, we have to kind of know, well, where was Joseph Smith from? What was he doing this for anyways? He's a 14-year-old kid. Why does he give a crap? Right? Like, I mean, why aren't you out playing?
Now, I also want to let the audience that is listening on the podcast audio end, if you'd like to see the visuals that we're presenting here on Zoom, go ahead and go on Rumble or Rokfin, and we're also back on YouTube now, so you can check it out there as well.
Awesome. So this is actually an excerpt from the church. I like to bring a lot of facts with my presentation and very little conjecture, because it helps people understand, right? If we're just saying, well, I think this or I think that, it doesn't really mean much. I mean, so this is real things from the Church History Museum. This is a letter that his mother wrote, and Joseph had been quite sick, and he was down. He got typhoid fever, and it landed in his leg, and he actually ended up with osteomyelitis of the bone, and it should have been cut off, the whole leg. But this mom was a known Scottish healer, and the family was quite a magical family, known to be treasure diggers and whatnot. So she called for some assistance, but the church does like to tell you that these are unlearned farm people that don't know how to read. I'm going to prove today that that's a load of crock, because the books that we're going to reference are high level reading. And remember, he's laid up for like years, and he's laid up around his Scottish mom. You know, it's interesting to me that he was very involved in this. I will say he's a Mason. He's a master Mason. The church doesn't dispute that anymore. Although when I was young, that was not a thing. I'm almost 50. And when I was young, they just would flat out say, no, that's not true. And so now the internet, they kind of have to go, here's a little video about it. Yeah. His brother's name was Hiram, for some fun context as well.
Nice.
Yeah, right. And so the mom says to her friend, she's just writing saying that they're not lazy, basically. But I'm going to read this little part because it's important. It says, let not my readers suppose that because I shall pursue another topic for a season, that we stopped our labor and went at trying to win the faculty of a brack. Drawing magic circles or soothsaying to the neglect of all kinds of business. So we're not lazy, just drawing circles. We're doing our work too. Okay, so she said something important there. And most people will gloss over it, call it folk magic, say it's whatever. They've written books on it. There's apologists. And they just say, well, he was just a treasure digging person. Their family was water witching. A lot of people did that back then. And that sounds fine, but that's not true. And I'm going to show you why. So a brack is she says, the house of a brack. And this is Abraxas, the chicken snake god. They're talking about homages like abracadabra. That comes from there. And these are her words, not mine. So they can say whatever they want about them, but obviously there's something going on there where they're talking about magic circles and a brack and blah, blah, blah. So this is just the mom, let alone the dad. So this is something, these spectacles were gigantic.
Now, I want to go back to a second. You said a brack. Now, yeah. I also know this. Some know this as Abraxas, as this chicken-headed snake god that is worshipped in ancient occult circles, right?
Right. Yep. And they used to have rings, Abraxas rings and different things. And it doesn't surprise me really because, I mean, she was Scottish. So it's not overly surprising. And actually, the first Book of Mormon that was written other than in English was written in Welsh because there were so many Welsh people here. So I mean, they bring their histories over with them, and I'm not demeaning them. I don't care if you're a devil worshiper or whatever you want to do, right? Like that's your prerogative. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying that people can do what they want. But when you're lured into something and you're not told the truth and you don't know what you're doing and you have no idea about any of this, that's unfair, you know? So that was my main thing with kind of digging into all this with the church. And again, like I said, they make this beautiful story that he got the plates and it was this nice day. Well, the fun thing about Joseph Smith is he got in a lot of trouble and he got taken to court for treasure digging. And I have the ticket at the end of my presentation showing this, but his neighbors all had to be, write affidavits for this case. And so he gave his affidavit, Willard Chase, about how the plates were found. And it was not this wonderful, beautiful story that the church likes to present. It happened in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. in the dark in all black. He had to borrow a black horse from the neighbor, which is why the neighbor knew about it, and go get these plates and get them out of the ground. Well, this took years and years. And finally, this was the time that it happened because he would go back and visit this angel every single year. And, then he had the plates and he supposedly used these giant spectacles that look like this. And I mean, I'm sorry, not very Christian looking for those that can't see.
Oh, that's crazy.
There's the Star of David, square and compass, or Rampham as well, if you want to call it that. So this is what I was told, that this is how this was translated. And it looks more, quote unquote, normal, like book, glasses, kind of looks legit. That's not what happened. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we found out that the South Park thing was true about the Mormons. So when it came out, we laughed about it and said, that's so stupid. That's not true. Actually,
now what was the
that
South
whole
Park
episode
thing?
is true. So they made a funny parody about Joseph Smith and that he stuck his head in a hat. And so he put rocks in there, magical rocks. And all of us that were Mormons went, that's not true. That's stupid. Well, I thought it was stupid too. But here we are. And this is the prophet, seer, and revelator currently of the church. He's over 100 years old. He just turned 100, in fact. And not only is he pulling this hat out of the deep, dark dungeons of the vaults and putting it on, this is the real hat. He did this for a photo op. All of a sudden, all the Mormons that are over 40 went, what is happening? What? This is real? Like, we were told this was not real. And so this brings in speculation of all kinds of things. Now, there's books written about this. There's things written about this. And people say, well, didn't you read that book or didn't you see this? No. When you're a Mormon, you don't read anti-Mormon propaganda. You don't read things outside the church. You don't study that. But when the internet came, it caused a big problem for the church. So I feel like this was probably the reason why this came out. And also, this wonderful man, this prophet, seer, and revelator of the church, is a Skull and Bones member of the University of Utah, a chapter set up actually by the real Skull and Bones Society. They came out and set that up, 2 of their members. And also Alan Key, not Scroll and Key, but very similar. And he's a surgeon. And he's got some really bad. Well, if anybody wants to know all the speculation around his family and different things that way, my latest episode on the Pace memo should give you a pretty good understanding of what happened with pedophilia stuff in his own family. So I'm not blaming or saying that they were found guilty, but you might want to look at it. It's an interesting rabbit hole. So this guy supposedly receives direct revelation from God still. This is a thing. And they believe in that and they change doctrine on it quite often.
Now, so let's just recap on Joseph Smith for a second. He was visited multiple times by this quote-unquote angel who you said was most likely a deceased spirit that was being summoned through necromancy of some sort. And he was given information about these plates. And he was using these strange goggles or glasses to locate this. Is that right so far? Supposedly. Right? Allegedly.
Yes. And I would love to tell you that there's some artifacts that we could go. Sorry, one sec. That came unplugged. I would love to say that there's some artifacts that we could go show you about that, like the plates themselves or the glasses, but an angel needed them back, so they had to go
Now,
back.
supposedly, what was on these plates? What were the plates about?
Sure. So this is a written account of the people in America, just like the Bible is a written account of the people in that land. So this is what he's told, right? That this guy Moroni was one of those people, and that he is now a very white Indian. This is his description, not mine. And that his people's account was hidden and they were waiting for the right person, and that, you know, he translated them by these giant spectacles. They were not small, way too big, maybe like one whole head in one of the lenses. And so, I mean, it could be, I don't know. Nobody really says much other than they were a thin frame and they had these crystals inside them that look like rocks. So he did quit using those and instead started using the hat method because he said it hurt his eyes. And so we get into his stones. And this is one of his rocks that he had, his seer stones. And it was actually stolen from his neighbor. So literally Mormonism is built upon a stolen rock on Willard Chase's property. There's upwards of 5 stones, and most of them have been seen to this point, except the white one, which I find really interesting. Why put the rest of them in a museum or whatever and show them to everyone,
supposedly
but not
in
this
possession of some institution?
Oh no, the angel needed them.
The angel took them back. Ah,
yeah, the
that's
angel
convenient.
needed them.
all right.
Yes, the angel needed those and the glasses, so there is no.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Gotcha. So you can see the problems here. And, you know, people talk about whether or not these are, you know, some sort of crystal or whatnot. And I really didn't know what to make of this until I started studying something else. And it was really put on my heart to study John Dee. And it sounds insane because it's occultism, but it sure made a lot of sense afterward. And I'll show you why. Now, this is a rendition that somebody made, and this is going to be important. This is a pouch that holds sigils for sigil magic, for protections and different things. And this is the hat, and this is the rock. So this is how it's basically put together from, you know, all the accounts from journals and whatnot. So again, Smith family magical relics. Now, the church likes to say these things right here in this little pouch were his brothers, Hiram. They died together. They were martyred at some point because Joseph was stealing everyone's wives. And also he told masonry secrets to women and let them come play too. So they kind of joke that, you know, Mormons are Masons for the whole family, but like not kids, right? Not until they're 18. Wow. And so I don't know what the facts are, but definitely he did do the widow's sign supposedly at the end for help, and they did not assist. So that will tell you a lot. But Hiram, his brother, was a very studious kid. He was not the treasure digger. He was off to college. Now, remember, these are supposed to be backwoods people, and, you know, they don't know anything. But his brother's at Dartmouth. So there's that fun fact. If your brother's laid up on a couch with a bum leg for a long period of time and you're at college, would you maybe bring him a book or lots of books? Because there's no TV, you know. But they'll say these parchments are not the brothers. And these are all about treasure digging. Okay. These are all about angels and treasure. And this brother just wasn't involved in any of that. So I kind of find it hard to believe. They split it up after the death, and that's what happened. And so his wife was very not into this. She just wanted one other thing back that is very occult, but we'll get there. This is one of the first parchments, and I do have a better photo of this, but this is the real photo of it. It's called the Holiness to the Lord parchment. And this is also one of the parchments. So just to give some background, it says they were inherited, like I said, by Hiram's family after the death. And so they are owned by a private collector, which is why the church cannot get rid of them. Also, our church is really against astrology, but this is an actual excerpt from Joseph's actual journal. So these are on the Joseph Smith papers. You can find that online. And this is a more color-coded cipher of the first one that
Now, the
we
one you were
saw.
previously showing,
Now,
just so the audience listening knows, was some sort of astrological parchment with.
oh yeah, yes,
Mm,
astrology parchment, and the sun and moon and different things like that. But we're not supposed to deal with any
mm.
of that. We're not supposed to do that as Mormons. And so this one I broke apart because I found it super interesting. Oops. Well, I found it interesting that it gets into, whoa, the computer is going real fast right now. It gets into Solomonic magic, and they like to say this is folk magic, and it just isn't. And again, we have another piece of the puzzle, and I'll break that apart here in a second because apparently it's wanting to go crazy. But Jupiter talisman was also found on Joseph. His magical underwear were missing at the time he was killed, i.e., martyred. We will get into those as well. But he did have his Jupiter talisman on. And people will say, well, what is a Jupiter talisman and where does that come from? Well, there's only a couple places that you could have found this information, and it is very magical information. And that is the Magus by Francis Barrett at the time. So the markings on this actually also come from the Greater Seal of Solomon, and it is the third pentacle of Jupiter. This is where I throw out the notion that there is folk magic. I'm sorry, church. We're getting into occult magic. And I don't care. If you want to do that, cool. Don't lie. Like when you lie, people get mad and they trace it down and then they blast you on podcasts for over a year because they're irritated. And so, these things were also found in Sibley's Book of Witchcraft, which is also almost as old, but also traced back to Solomonic magic. So also the family had a ceremonial magic dagger. It is a Mars knife. Yeah, we're starting to get the picture here. If you know anything about the occult whatsoever, everybody that does just went the same thing you did. Right. So there are markings on this knife as well as these markings that are on the first sigil, which are calling down for specific angels and or demons, including the Jupiter talisman. So this one is the Nalga symbol, and it is devoted to the protection of the assaulted people who are assaulted by evil spirits or witches. Okay. So he is worried about this, and it's to wear around your neck for protection. And that's on that first parchment. This is another parchment he had in there called the Jehovah parchment. And whenever you have these symbols like this, and this is the one that actually led me to John D. This is called Jubanlades, and they're open and not within a seal. That means you're directly working with them. And I talked to Dr. Justin Sledge from Esoterica, and he discussed some Kabbalistic magic with me, different things like this. And he says, if I had to choose between demons and angels any day, I'd choose a demon. They're pretty terrifying, the angels. So I don't know exactly everything about Jewish mysticism. I don't pretend to, but I do think that's an interesting thing to say where he's calling down specific angels. So, and people can look these up under the names I've provided as well if they're listening. This is the symbols that are on the seal of Mars is what is on the knife. And also on the other side, the intelligence of Mars. Now, anytime they say intelligence of anything, it means demon. And they can look this up. This is all Solomonic magic. And it's got Adonai, Scorpio, and the intelligence of Mars on it. And the purpose of these being on the knife is that they're already the prayer or whatever you want to call it, incantation, whatever you want to say, is already there if they're sacrificing something, which they did.
Wow.
They did quite often. And there were actually accounts of this by the neighbors. This is the real photo of it. I like to do the diagram for better photographic evidence, but also, it's got the tables on here. I mean, this is all Solomonic magic. It just is. And I don't know why the church likes to say it's folk magic. It's a little bit silly to me. These are a few other symbols that are on the holiness of the Lord one and the Jubanlades that I spoke about. These are signs for Tetragrammaton, Polypa, another angel, protecting you virgins from debauchery, which is funny because we'll get there. He must not have wore that one all the time.
That is such a big question. Why do they hide behind this false religion when it's really these ancient magical occult practices, this black magic, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, basically. And even if people want to say it's not, from what I can see, and this is just conjecture, but it aligns very well with Martinism. Um, and I have been studying really deep into Masonry to try and figure out exactly which magical practices they were practicing. And honestly, like, I don't care which one it is, just for knowledge's sake. I would like to unearth that, right? So that people have the right to know these things, especially people that are in there still, because I didn't know, because we're going to get into some crazy stuff that I did. And that really pissed me off when I got thought I was going to heaven, man. So it's not about that. So, and also this sign and symbol is kind of interesting. It says, whoso beareth this figure about him, all spirits shall do him homage. Little interesting there. I'm just saying, like, they're playing with some fire here, and all of these different signs and symbols are only listed in 3 places, which is Ebenezer Sibley's New and Complete Illustration of Occult Sciences, or in the Magus, or in the Lesser Greater Keys of Solomon. And I just don't understand why they try and hide it. And then when I go to look for a download for the Greater Keys of Solomon, they have it. Guess who uploaded it? Brigham Young University, which is the Mormon college.
Wow.
So thank you, Brigham Young University. I have no idea why you have that, but thank you. Yeah, interesting for sure. And then we have this is more recent years of Mormonism. They have adopted a new symbol, and it's quickly growing in popularity. It is called the Seal of Melchizedek. But actually, that's not a seal, because what we know about magic is, unless it has a circle around it, it's really not a seal, right? So they're working with whatever that particular thing is, and it is the Star of Rampam. And it's just very interesting that this is a new thing. This is new now. This represents their Melchizedek priesthood, which is the highest priesthood of the Mormon church for men. So apparently it was bestowed back upon the earth by an angel to Joseph Smith, who also saw like 26 other dead people, just so you know, including John the Baptist and his dead brother, which we'll get to. Wow. But, you know, Mormon magic, necromancy.
That's crazy.
So, right. This is getting weirder and weirder. And people always want to say, well, the Mormons are such nice people and they dress so good. Well, that's probably because they're raising up CIA agents. Don't worry about it. And I'm not kidding. Yeah. So this is something I went into at about 13. This is a baptismal font inside the temple. You do need a recommend to go through the temple. So you get to go get asked creepy questions first about whether you masturbate or not in front of a 45-year-old guy that's your bishop. And then he'll sign the thing if you've been good. So, or also, if you had sex, oh my gosh, we cannot do that before marriage, because actually that sin is next to murder. That's what you hear growing up, just so you know. So everybody knows by the time they've gone to the bishop's office twice, we don't talk about that anymore. We're all perfect. So we don't say those things anymore. Even if they happen, forget about truth. So you get to go do these baptisms, but you've already been baptized, because at 8 years old, you're baptized. So what are we doing here? We're baptizing dead people. That's what. So, fun fact, all the genealogy that Mormons are obsessed with. And when I show you pictures about their obsession, which you're the first person I've added this to, because there was some weird stuff this week and I decided to add it in. But anyways, back to this photo. This is an actual print off individual record. Any Mormon person will recognize this. This is a church record, and it says so down at the bottom. It also says when it and the copyright and everything. So it is not mine, but they decided to do it for Hitler. Don't worry. He's safe too. Yeah. Right here is the name, his parents. And while they were busy doing that, as if that wasn't bad enough.
Are baptizing dead people just for the record of it?
Yes. By proxy. So one kid can baptize at least 8 to 10 people. Every Mormon is challenged with doing every bit of their genealogy that they can get their hands on and entering it into a database, which is called familysearch.org. No, they do not own 23andMe or Ancestry.com, but all their information goes in there.
Wow.
So, I mean, potato,
Yeah.
potato. Yeah. Also, why they were busy helping Hitler out, to be even more offensive, they did all the Jews, including Anne Frank.
Huh.
That pissed some people
Yeah.
off. They had to stop it for a minute.
Huh.
Yeah, they had to stop for a minute. But then they did it again. So I don't know. This is Joseph Smith, because he did have that limp, his serpent cane that he had. This is a close-up on the sigils that were engraved in it, as well as the top of it that looks like a snake. This goes back to like creation stories and different things, but people will recognize it. I don't want to get too far into it, but it leads us into the next thing, which are coffin canes. So this wooden cane has hair in the knob, which was taken from the dead Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith and braided, and they made a bunch of them. And there are multiple accounts in people's diaries, because they kept moving people all the time that died, including his dead brother Alvin before he died, before Joseph himself died. And they had a habit of this. Okay. In fact, so bad that they ran a newspaper ad for his brother that said, "We're digging him up just in case you saw us dig him up." We did, because we're checking, because we didn't dig him up. And people said we did. People joke that he had a hand, possibly in Mormonism, even though he had passed away. Also, that was his dad's first son, Alvin. I find it interesting on a Faustian bargain level that his dad's first son died right as we hear about the golden plates coming into play, as well as Joseph Smith's wife went with him to get the plates. Of course, she couldn't go by the angel. She sat in the cart, but she was newly married to him, and they had a baby shortly after this. That baby lived a few moments after birth because it was so atrociously deformed. And they also named it Alvin, the dead brother's name. So both their first sons are dead. I mean, I'm just saying, you can make your own conjecture on that, but we all know what Faustian bargains play with. This is regarding that whole situation that I said changed this week. So I found this really interesting. On the very day that P. Diddy got arrested, all of the people on 23andMe board resigned, except for the president, the owner.
Yeah. We're
Right.
having a few
Weird. And
those CEOs and celebrities just disappearing from reality.
And this Wojcicki lady, Ann Wojcicki, her sister actually was the owner of YouTube. And she randomly died of cancer suddenly at 50 something in August. And her son randomly died of a drug overdose right before that in April or February. So I just find that a little strange. So I thought this might be a fun little thing to add in, because what I'm showing you right here is a huge vault in the side of a mountain here in Utah, full of genealogy. That's all it's full of. Whoa. It's full of those records that I just showed you. And this is them standing by it. Thank you, church, for the photo. The granite genealogical vaults. There are billions of DNA samples and different DNA information like in here. Here is a cardex of all of the genealogy and histories. If you think you're not getting baptized by Mormons, you're crazy. Like, everybody's getting baptized by the Mormons. As soon as you die, you're getting baptized. I promise you. Yeah, they don't care. And I find it very interesting that all of this is occurring, right? And 23andMe and Ancestry.com and all these things. And then we get into pages like the Mormon transhumanist page. Weird. They do believe in life after death. They also believe in life before you're born. So there is something called the premortal existence that Mormons believe in, that we basically chose our whole life, and that we picked our parents, and every problem you're ever going to deal with, you chose that. They also talk about, as humanity now is, God once was. As God now is, humanity may become. Lorenzo Snow, 5th president of the LDS Church. Credit to the Mormon transhumanist page. Also, Joseph Smith at the King Follett sermon God once was, as we are now, and is an exalted person and sits enthroned in yonder heavens. That is the great secret. Huh.
Wow.
So we get into why these Mormons are doing all the fun things that they do, right? This is where I got married, not the exact room, but this is how I got married. We'll say that. Wait till you see my dress, but we'll get there. You kneel over this altar and you look into these mirrors, and they go on forever and ever because they're facing each other, which doesn't sound occult at all, because it is.
Yeah.
It's super creepy. Wait till you see our outfits, let alone this treasure digging scandal that was presented from Willard Chase. This is an actual rendition from his affidavit in court stating what was going on and what the dad and Joseph Smith were doing. But also they left out the part that was gruesome of the slitting of their blackest sheep or goat. I can't remember. And then letting the blood spray all around the magic circle.
Yeah. If you're listening on the audio, can you go back to that picture for a second?
I didn't.
That's okay.
It's going crazy every once in a
while.
No,
if you're listening on audio, it's just a depiction of them digging, but they're surrounded by a circle with these poles that are sticking out of the ground that are reflecting these sigil shadows onto the ground. It's a very interesting picture.
The dad drew these with a sword into the ground on the symbol. Okay. So that's how they got there. Right. With his ceremonial sword. And then they drew a circle to seal it in and it's likely a protection sigil from Solomonic magic. But here again, we're talking about magical practices, occult magical practices, and it gets very far into John Dee and everything like that. So this is the ticket he got for that so that I can prove that, I like reality. This is reality. This is from his court case. You can look up the court case and find all of these affidavits online from this date, March 20th, 1826, Joseph Smith, the glass looker. So this is also what really surprised me and was linking to John Dee for me. Now, I want people to understand some context with John Dee. He was the one that gave us the Enochian alphabet. He would he wouldn't. His assistant, Edward Kelly, did, because he actually had a super mathematical brain and he was like super genius smart and he just couldn't channel the same. So he had somebody else do it. But he would stare into an obsidian mirror, obsidian like crystal obsidian, and block out all the light. Sound familiar at all? And he would call out characters and then they would translate them later. Well, Joseph Smith, it was opposite. He had a scribe. He was the one scrying, looking into the hat, blocking out all the light with the crystal rock in there. And they both came up with their own languages. At the bottom, this is a true sample of the writings that they did. And I put it next to the Enochian alphabet for a reason, because they have a lot of similarities. Are they exactly the same? No. But I find it pretty interesting. All of the religions that came from things like this, like John Dee, for example, have a huge price to pay. And at some point, they know they're not talking to angels anymore, because then they go, hey, you got to bang his wife. True story. Yeah. And then they swapped. And then his wife got pregnant and he ended up raising Edward's child for the rest of his whole life. So there's always this big payment, right? And it's not very godly. Like, you kind of know going into this at this point, like, maybe this is not who I thought it was, right? Like, maybe this is a fallen spirit. And so with Joseph Smith, it was polygamy. Fun fact, also, Muhammad was talking to Gabriel, and he would fall down and have fits and wake up from the darkness that swirled him, very much similar to Joseph Smith's story. He had scribes that memorized. They were non-written people. And then they would memorize it, and it became a religion. But what did he have to do? Polygamy, very similar to Joseph. Joseph's was polygamy as well. We can do a fun one. We can do Aleister Crowley. Crowley and his wife were messing around in Egypt, and then they saw an alien, not an angel, but an alien. It was Aiwass, and Aiwass told him, write this down, and it became the Book of the Law, which became Thelema. We can do Scientology. They're out in the desert we already know what was the exchange there. People don't know. Check it out. Check out Babylon Workings. It's a lot. We're not going to put that up on the screen. And it becomes a book, which becomes a religion. And also, by the way, he stole his girlfriend. So, I mean, it's kind of always the same story over and over again. And I can verify that these characters were the real characters because they took this to get validated by a guy named Charles Anton. And he was like, okay, you say this is Reformed Egyptian, but where'd you get it? And he's like, well, we talked to this angel, and he's like, get out of my office. I'm done. No.
Yeah.
So he kept the paper. They're like, can we have that back now? And he's like, no. So thank you, Charles Anton.
Yeah.
Right? I got to turn this down because we're going to go into a fake temple ceremony. Now, I went through the temple ceremonies many, many times for many, many years. So this is a pretty good rendition. Yes, it's made by anti-Mormon propaganda. Yes, it's a reenactment. Yes, there have been changes. You are going to see some signs and penalties in here that slit their throats, and they don't do that anymore. So just so you're aware, I'm going to push play. Yeah, except my computer really doesn't want to play it. All right, we'll try again. Let's go.
What you are seeing is an authentic first-time ever on film reenactment of secret Mormon temple ceremonies that even most Mormons have never seen. And those who have sworn never to reveal these secrets under penalty of death.
The execution of the penalty is represented by placing the right thumb under the left ear, drawing the thumb quickly across the throat to the right ear, and dropping the hand to the side.
All of us who've been through the temple have sworn solemn oaths consenting to having our throat slit and our heart and our vitals torn out.
The execution of the penalty is represented by drawing the thumb quickly across the body and dropping the hands to the side.
In the Mormon temple marriage, the partners are sealed to each other for time and all eternity in Mason-like rituals. And without this ceremony, no one can enter the presence of Joseph Smith and become a god.
Pay, lay, ale. Brother Pratt, having authority, I wash you preparatory to receiving your anointings for and in behalf of John Kimball, who is dead, that you may become clean from the blood and sins of this generation.
Sister Bradford, I wash you preparatory to you receiving your anointings for and behalf of
Eliza Barrett.
Eliza Barrett, who is dead, that you may become clean from the blood and sins of this generation.
I wash your head, that your brain and intellect may become clear and active.
Your eyes, that you may see clearly and discern between truth and error.
Thousands of occultic ceremonies each day are performed for the dead, so that they too can receive the benefits of Mormonism. Mormons are encouraged to have encounters with the dead, and it's not uncommon for demons impersonating the dead to appear to Mormons stating that they've been converted to the Mormon church in the spirit world and now want their family history traced.
Your loins, that you may be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, that you may have joy in your posterity.
Your vitals and bowels, that they may be strong and healthy and perform their proper function.
Your breast, that it may be the receptacle of pure and virtuous principles.
Okay, they don't grip your boob. They do touch you right above it. And also you don't go naked anymore. When I went, you had to be naked underneath a poncho thing, and it was super uncomfy, and people didn't like it. So they changed it, thank heavens. But still, it was that when my great grandma went through, she was scrubbed in a bathtub with baby oil. So naked, butt naked. So yeah, I am a generational Mormon. So even my DNA says Mormon settler. So like they know who we are basically. But yeah, this is the outfit you wear when you get married. Super cutie. These aprons are green. This is a bad picture. This is one of the signs and symbols that they do. And I found it extremely interesting. I did tell you I'm on a kind of a search for what they're doing exactly. I did find this, but the Typhonian OTO is too young for this. So I'm going back further. But anyways, very interesting.
Yeah, for those listening, they're all dressed in these white flowing robes or white suits, all white with these aprons on, kind of reminiscent of what Freemasons wear at times.
Yes. Yep, very similar. And he was a Freemason. So he did, do some things. And now they have changed the Pele El to, oh God, hear the words of my mouth. And it's a funny part when you're in the temple. Now, the temple ceremony is 2 hours long. That little tiny piece I showed you is just very brief. You get signs and symbols, you get your new underwear, you get your new name. You go through the first time for yourself, but then you go through every time after that for dead people. So that's what she was talking about when she said, for in behalf of Eliza Barrett. It's because that you are literally taking on the proxy for Eliza Barrett and doing her temple ceremony stuff. So they not only baptize you, but they do all the work. They will seal you to your partner. If they're dead, everything is done. All these things. And these green aprons are really always struck me as odd. And we're going to go to a part there in a minute. And I just found it always kind of weird, very weird, even more weird than it already is. So these are the underwear. Yeah. These are real. I wore these for years. They're extremely uncomfortable. You're hot all the time. You can never take them off unless you're changing them. They're just like your underwear. So you would have lots of pairs of these. People always say, what do you mean? You can't wash them? No, not what I mean. I mean, you have like 7 pairs of these and you wear them every day and you just switch them out and whatnot. So you have to have them touching your skin. There is a square and compass on your nipples and a ruler sideways on your umbilicus. I find that interesting. They're all openings of your body. And you get this new name and you get these coverings and whatnot. Here again is another symbol. If these get worn out, you have to cut the symbols out and burn them to throw them away.
That is
so it's a really serious situation. You can only take them off if you're swimming, going to the gym, making more Mormons, then you got to put them right back on, showering. That's it.
Oh, so you can take them off if you're going to be intimate.
If you're making more Mormons, for sure.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, intimate's even better. I like to say it that way because they tell Mormons to have lots of kids. I have 6, so so does everyone in Utah. And that's why I'm a grandma of 2 already, and I'm not even 50 yet. So we all do it. And this is the apron part that I said was kind of interesting. Now, back in the day, there is a full reenactment of a play. Now they've had to change it. It was a play. It was live. Then it was a movie, but all the movie people left the church, so they had to take that down. Okay, I've heard. I'll say that is conjecture on that part. So they've changed it to slides now without people because then you don't have to worry about that. But there is one part in this ceremony and Satan comes out. Yes, Satan is there. Satan is Jesus's brother, just in case you all didn't know. Lucifer is Satan's fallen brother in heaven, and black people are black because they were cursed because they didn't do anything in the war in heaven, just so you know. But we can't go to racism today. It's a whole horrible thing. My niece is black, half black. So that really went over like a lead balloon for us here. That isn't why I left. They fixed it in 1978. But dude, 1978.
That's not that long ago.
I was alive.
Really not that long ago.
Yeah,
man.
like
wow.
Embarrassing. The prophets of the church actually said when they asked the second prophet of the church, Brigham Young, when he was going to fix it, he said, "Oh, I can't fix it because I didn't give the curse. So God has to do it." Wow. So yeah. So we do get this green apron that we don't wear as we walk in. We have a one-breasted robe. Anybody in the OTO will recognize that immediately. And we have veils. We used to veil our faces, but then the women were like, that's not fair. So now I guess they don't. And we get these aprons out at the part where Satan comes and Adam's praying and he's on the ground and he's sorry for what he did. And he got the garments and he got thrown out of Eden, and it's a whole story. And then, so he's praying and praying. Well, he hadn't got the garments yet. So he's praying and praying. He's naked. And he's praying and says, God of this world, show up. And Satan shows up and he gives us an apron. He gives us fig leaves. And everybody stands, and the guy in the front says, now everyone stand and put on your apron. And I'm like, why the hell are we doing what the devil says to do? What is happening? Like, you have to understand how traumatizing this is. They don't tell us anything.
Nuts.
They tell us nothing. And we're 18-year-old children, or sometimes 19. I was 20, because the boys go through this whole shindig when they're 18 and serve a mission, or the girls, whichever, whatever. And then the women go through, if they haven't gone through and for a mission, they do it when they are going to be married. And so I was already married. My husband was a convert. I was 17 when I got married. Don't do that. It's so dumb. Mormons. Freaking Mormons, right?
Yeah.
Just kidding. He was 25. So I do really mean that as far as getting married young. And Satan pops up and gives us these and says, put them on so you can like cover yourself up. But then Adam sees his apron. Now it's black, but it used to look pretty cool, like this Masonic apron. And he says, what is it? And he says, it's a symbol of my powers and priesthoods. Oh. And what does it have on it? All-seeing eye, beehive, skull, and crossbones, compasses, suns, moons, etc. Blah, 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 blah. And so for people that don't know, that aren't from Utah, Utah is the beehive state. They are everywhere, all over. You can look into symbology of the beehive and occult circumstances and like God and goddess worship. It's pretty interesting. These are the grips that we receive now. These are Masonic grips. And I will say we receive a few others that are like your hand to the square and different things. But
The grips
these, we only
are
get
basically
3.
handshakes, like secret handshakes.
And so secret handshakes. And we're never supposed to do them outside of the temple. We only got 3. The Masons got 5 because they're cooler than us. But the bottom, the real grip of a master mason, or the lion's paw, this is what Joseph Smith did it. He called it the true sign of the nail, like Jesus, and just changed the name. That's why I put this up there, not to offend anyone, but just to show that he godized them, basically. And he really made some Masons mad. And so this, remember what I said, you're never supposed to do those handshakes unless you're in the temple. Funny, baby Bush is here with the previous prophet of the church, Thomas S. Monson, doing the handshakes right out in the open air.
Yeah.
Funny. Maybe he didn't get the memo. He's only the prophet, seer, and revelator. This is the current prophet, seer, and revelator as well. And he is doing that symbol on that key. And I can see it because I know what it is. But not everyone would have caught that. On the key, in Italy. By the way, they've never breached Italy until this time frame. The Vatican has pretty much made sure they were not able to build any kind of temple things there, and they did now. So interesting that he's holding the keys of the kingdom, right?
Wow.
I am glad I have this photo because I do believe these will be scrubbed off of the temple. This is a rendition of the Mormon temple in Salt Lake City, Utah, very near where I live. These are the symbols that are on the outside, not even getting into the interior or to the second anointing, because we will be here a very long time if we do. But these are sunstones, moonstones, cloud stones. Remember, we're not supposed to touchy the astrology, but apparently they can. And also Brigham Young said people came from the sun, and Joseph Smith, that's the second prophet, said Joseph Smith was the first, that people lived on the moon. So when I started, I thought this was ridiculous. Okay. Like so silly, until I started researching the people that think these things, which has led me to Martinism. I'm not sure 100% if that's exactly what it was. I will let you guys know when I am sure 100%, because I will do a podcast about it.
Sweet.
But that is my presentation.
That is absolutely insane. So what were the circumstances that led you to ultimately get the fuck out of there?
Right. Well, I will tell people, be careful when you leave. It is not as simple as it sounded. My mom had left the church years before, and she became a Stevens minister of a just non-denomination Christian church. And she planted little seeds in me. And then I met my husband, and I had the divorce from the 17-year-old mistake. And that was a goofy thing. But I did last like almost 11 years. I mean, pretty good, till he ran off with a polygamous girl. But, you know, things happen. They're not supposed to share. The girls don't share. The boys have all the women, but the women are not supposed to have more than one man. So no, she wasn't doing it like for religious purposes. And he just kind of was on meth and took off. So here I am, like 24 with 2 kids, right? Divorced. And eventually I get like into my 30s and I meet my husband now, and he's great. And he is also an ex-Mormon. We call him ex-Mos for funsies. There's never Mos, ex-Mos, new Mos. There's all kinds of Mos. But we actually started talking one time and I said, well, I kind of feel bad because I left the church and I'm not doing anything with my life about the church right now. And he's like, I'm never going back to that church. You're crazy out of your mind. And I'm like, why? And he's like, here, let me show you something. And so he pulls up the YouTube, and this is like probably 2012. This is early on, and all this stuff wasn't blown wide out now. Like, this is crazy blown out now. And I was not seeking anyways, because I never wanted to break the rules, right? And so I went and looked, and I'm like, why are they doing this ceremony on YouTube? And he's like, because it's not a temple ceremony, it's a freaking Mason ceremony. What are you talking about? And I'm like, what? And he's like, you need to do some research into what you believe before you just jump back into the frying pan. Like, it's too much. So luckily he helped me. My mom helped me. I got out, and I really didn't do a whole lot with that until 2020. I mean, I believed in God. I love God, but I wasn't doing any of this, for sure not researching more other than, okay, this seems goofy. Let's not do that anymore. Right. Give my heart to God. That was all. And then I had a really eye-opening experience in 2020 as a nurse with what came out. And, you know, the church is standing on that situation because they told everyone to get the cure, including all men, women, and children in the church. And funny enough, their top 10 holdings in the church will tell you why they did that. United Health is one of them. Microsoft is the first, just so people know. Billy Boy's their good friend. NVIDIA, Alphabet, all the things. And Tesla. Actually, Tesla, Elon Musk's top financial advisor is Jared Birchall, who is also a very active Mormon. But anyway, I digress. So I get out, and my grandma goes batshit crazy. And she's like sending missionaries to my house. She sues me. She tries to take my kids. Wow. She takes me to court for everything she ever bought them, including a Disneyland trip. And she's going crazy on my ass. And so I really did lose all my family and extended family, except for my mom and my dad at this time. My dad had never been a member, so he was super happy. Actually, it's his birthday today. He's passed away, but I can't help but think he'd be pretty proud of me that I'm out of all of the things, because he never was into the things. And so, yeah, I got out and I was able to get my whole entire family out.
Excellent.
We're all rebaptized. I got baptized to nothing in a reservoir. I just got baptized to God in the middle of nature, because that's what I'm going to do.
Excellent.
So I believe in the Bible, but I also believe in extra canonical books, and I read a lot. Obviously, done a lot of research on things, because I just don't like when people are lied to. It's a huge pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
So
definitely. Now, earlier during your presentation, you briefly mentioned that they're most likely turning out CIA agents from these institutions. Is there any correlating information you came across that really lends to that?
Oh, for sure. I did a whole episode on this and the Mormon Mafia. So there is such a thing called the Mormon Mafia, number 97 on my podcast. And also it is mentioned on the Pace Memo 105. I also have a Rotary Club tie-in that we've already filmed, and it will be coming out. And you will be shocked at some of the ties with the CIA, with Vegas, with the Rotary Club, with it's shocking, honestly. And Utah has tons of, they have a CIA, FBI, IRS building, plus that big vault system up there, and one other security for the NSA here in Utah alone, because they recruit. They say they do. They don't hide it. The Mormon Mafia was really busted open and intercepted along with Bill Mayhew, which he wasn't the guy that they filmed Mission Impossible after his life. He was a CIA guy. and he got all the contracts for the 2 Mormon guys that infiltrated that are still extremely wealthy from this whole situation. Last name Gay, and the other one, I can't remember right now, but I'll think of it. Anyway, they went on to keep this whole thing going. The contracts for them are huge. They were helping the Bushes with Howard Hughes's islands. This gets into oil. This is crazy ties. Like every time something like this happens and I get the information, I like to present it like, here is all of this stuff, because you see what I do. Like, I want proof. I want the proof. I want you to see the proof. I want you to go look it up. I want you to do it, because I don't want my word like, oh, that crazy lady that got out of the church and is mad said that. No, this is real stuff. So,
what are the differences, if any, between the Mormon Church and the Latter-day Saints?
There isn't any. So the guy that I showed you doing the secret handshake with Baby Bush, he was very into calling us Mormons, Thomas S. Monson. It's a nickname. It's the Book of Mormon. So people were like, oh, they're Mormons because the Church of Latter-day Saints is extremely long. And so they just call them LDS. Well, the new prophet, the guy in Skull and Bones that I told you about, he likes LDS better. And so he started saying, we're not Mormons. So they change it every time they get a new prophet and they talk to God.
The Mormons, whenever you hear about them, it always brings up a culty vibe. So, why not change it to something else, which they usually do all the time, rebrand things just to keep it fresh and keep us thinking that it is something that it's not. This is fascinating stuff. Heidi, is there any closing thoughts that you'd like to leave us with before we wrap this up?
I just always say all glory to God. I'm glad he got me out. I'm glad he saved me. I'm glad I can present this to people so that they can get out, because unless you want to stay in and you know what you're doing. If you saw this and you know what you want to do, then that's fine too. I hold no judgment on anybody's life. I just feel like it should be out in the open. Because by the time you're in the hot seat, they're doing all this stuff, you're losing your mind. And they do give you a point where they say you can get up and go if you're scared. Nobody does that. Your whole family's there. Your whole family's
Now, one more
there
thing
with
before
you.
we close out. I've heard speculation that this LDS church at the highest levels is involved with child trafficking at times.
That is what my new episode 105, the Pace Memo, is all about. It does include the current prophet of the church's daughter on some of these allegations. They're pretty gnarly. There is also considered a church inside the church, right? Like, of secrets. I'm not saying that these really occultic things that I'm going to be doing an episode on, that people know those things, like your grandma. She doesn't. My grandma didn't. Like, I definitely didn't. Like, nobody in the middle. It's just like government, right? Like, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Nobody gets it until you're up there. And once you're up there, it is no different than the cards that are falling in P. Diddy's house right now. And I promise you
That's
that.
crazy. Heidi, this is great.
Allegedly.
Yes, of course. Gotta add that in. Well, this was great, Heidi. Thank you so much.
Exactly.
Definitely love to do this again in the future. Much more we can discuss. Before we close out, remind the audience how they can find Unfiltered Rise and all your other links.
Awesome. I am Heidi Love. I'm at the Unfiltered Rise. I am everywhere podcasts are served. I do have a Patreon, and instead of cutting any of my episodes ever, I add 2 a month. They are either specific ones that I've done and not put out, or they're all about murder, Mormons, and mayhem. Because funny enough, Ted Bundy was Mormon. So I bet you didn't know that. So yeah, find me there. I do have my own website as well, unfilteredrisepodcast.com. And just come and find me. And please do a follow on Spotify. I only release once a week on YouTube, twice a week on Spotify, because YouTube doesn't like what I put on there very much.
I get that. Awesome.
Yeah. Got to be careful.
Heidi, thank you so much. Definitely love to speak again. And until next time, everyone have a wonderful evening. We will talk again tomorrow, and we'll see y'all then.